And here with me is Professor Abubakar Bahaj of the University of Southampton. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us on Media Network.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Since the conversation started, we've had conversations with the public sector, the private sector, politicians, but it's also very important that we pay attention to, um, you know, the academia as well. Because while we think solutions will come from the public and private sector, but in terms of investment, there is a role that the academia has to play. And I would like you to just share a bit of about the work you do and why it's important to also involve academia in this conversation about renewable energy access, particularly in unserved and underserved communities.
Okay, thanks very much. I wanted to tell you that we are working across all renewables and energy efficiency in the UK. And we have a large group of about 40 people of us working in this, academic and researchers. And we do all aspect of energy related to low carbon energy. But my main passion is really looking at energy that will be provided to the 600 million people that don't have it, especially in Africa. And that's called energy access. And we have projects in East Africa which are producing electricity for small, isolated villages that provide them with electricity, not only for their development, but also for aspect of health, education, and also aspect of development to go further in the field of entrepreneurship, in the field of commerce, and also mobility and e-cooking.
So, what would you say? The fact that you do a lot of research, what would you say you have seen that differentiates solutions that are being provided for particularly communities that are not even connected to the national grid in any shape or form? What are those things that you have seen?
I've seen that these communities are marginalized for two things. The first one is that governments do not have enough funding or fluidity in funds to allow them to extend the grid to them. And it may not be possible to extend the grid because it's more expensive, because there are innovations and solutions to do this. And the second one is related to aspect of knowing about what technology that they need to have and whether the large development banks are able to provide the funding required at the right time. And academia, as you mentioned earlier, academia are very important because they can provide the evidence to allow where investment needs to be and at what level. And without that evidence, which is impartial, right, it's important to recognize that academia could play a big role in providing electricity for those underprivileged communities in Africa.
Now, there's something that I think plays a key role. Energy access is important for socioeconomic growth, and you do research of this nature. I don't want to believe it comes cheap. And we always talk about financing for energy access, but there's also the financing for research based results that would then prefer be served as solutions moving forward. So what are you seeing in this regard? Are you getting enough financing from potential funders to carry out this research? Because when we come for these conferences, not all of the time do we hear them talk about financing that goes into the research for these kinds of solutions. So do you want to talk about it?
Correct. I think it's important to recognize that there isn't enough funding to allow us to provide the evidence. But whatever funding is available is always split out across many things. For example, I am advocating that we should take two or three countries in Africa and make an example of them in terms of research and evidence, produce high level of reports to enable the governments to go ahead with their programs and to enable development banks, for example, to provide the funding required. But if we spread it out across all the countries, it doesn't make a lot of difference. It doesn't make a lot of difference. So it's important. And the other important thing that I really need to highlight is that there are other tensions. One of the tension with energy access is that many of the developed countries now who've got the funding to do this are very busy with what's called net zero, and a lot of money is diverted to get those countries transitioning into a zero carbon by 2050. And I'm always advocating that we should also think about those 600 million people in the same process as we think about net zero, and give them a priority, because those are the people that need to stay where they are, create jobs and employment for them, to allow them to stay rather than migrate.
Thank you so much, Professor Abubakar. I mean, I look forward to then seeing more funding coming into this particular pipeline for more research, research, evidence-based research that would then, lead or at least be a starting point for the solutions that we require. But thank you so much for
Thank you very
joining
much
us
for
on Leader
having me.
Network.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And
Was
it's a
that okay,
wrap.
guys?
That was great. Thank you.
Think so?
Thank you for
It's
all. We
very,
need to
very,
take a picture with you as
it's
well.
very difficult with
Yeah.
the noise in the background.
Plus the train that was coming.